When a wealthy, beloved civic leader dies in a freak car accident, a persistent reporter digs his way through layers of overindulgent eulogizing and the protective nature of the man's widow to write about the darker truth he suspects lies underneath. In the 1942 drama, The Keeper of the Flame. And that's the film we're dusting off this week on Movie Bones.
He was the light of their eyes. It seems that the light has gone out.
No. It burns brighter than ever. It must always burn. We must see to that.
We?
Yes, all of us. All of us who were guided by that light, who drew warmth from the flame. And you can protect that flame.
I tried to.
Well, let us help you. You're not alone. That's what I've come here to tell you.
I tried. I had wondered if you spoke as you wrote.
I speak as I feel. I feel very deeply about this.
What do you want from me?
The life of Robert Forrest.
I can't give it to you. It's being taken away.
There are many things you could tell me.
What would you like? The sound of his laugh? The touch of his hand?
Tomorrow, perhaps?
I don't understand you, Mr. O'Malley. I don't see why I should talk to you. I've seen you 5 minutes. I don't know you. Anything about you. I wish you would go. I regret that I shall not be able to help you. Good night, Mr. O'Malley.
Good night, Mrs.
Forrest. That's Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn playing Stephen O'Malley and Christine Forrest. He's a wartime journalist back in the home front trying to dig up a unique angle on Christine's recently deceased and oddly apparently universally loved husband. I'll just come right out and say it, Ryan, not just in the scene, but overall, this movie just kind of left me flat. You can get a sense of it in the clip I just played, but really, I felt that pretty much any scene in the film was, up until the end, was pretty much just as representative of that phenomenon. It's that tone, I think it's the repressed intensity of it, whatever it is. It's the same throughout, and we don't know really a whole lot about the characters to kind of justify the kind of somewhat overwrought line reading, I guess. The actors themselves, I think, are doing a fine, okay job, but it's like, it just feels overwrought, and I just don't understand them. And it kind of all just felt flat to me. I kept trying to listen for some point of interest within to latch onto, something to help me understand who these people are and why they're talking like this, what their intention is. And while I could speculate about it all day long, I guess, it's like the film itself just wasn't seeming to offer me any clues. And did you sense that at all yourself in any way?
Yes and no, because, this film, it follows this type of, I don't want to call it trope, but it follows this type of line of reasoning where you catch on pretty quick. Like, Katharine Hepburn's character, Christine Forrest's husband, was probably not a good person. Like, because all the film does is build this guy up and build him 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 up. And it's like his death was very mysterious. She does know more than she's letting on. And you could either go one or two ways with it. One way is this guy was probably not a good person. Like, as much as everyone idolizes him, probably just wasn't a good person, or she's not a very good person. The problem is, it does not really lend itself too much. If you've seen enough of these types of films, it doesn't lend itself very well to this notion that she's secretly a terrible person who has done a terrible thing and has figured out a way to cover up her terribleness. She's not manipulative. Like, she's pretty much alone in a sense. Like, she's by herself. It's her versus kind of everybody else. So, again, that doesn't lend itself very well to this idea that, oh, this guy was truly a saint and his death was not a good thing. Now, in my personal opinion, this is the way I can... I'm not calling myself a great movie reader, but just as I'm watching the movie, all I'm sitting there thinking is like, okay, this guy's clearly a bad guy. He's too much hero worship. He's clearly a bad guy. And then again, therein lies a bit of a rub here. You can sense that, but the thing is, it does not really give itself away enough to make you go, okay. And there's like this huge twist. We're going to talk about the twist because I don't care about spoiler. But there is this huge twist. And when you hit the twist, you're going, see, I knew it.
I always suspected that the guy himself was not a good guy. And I did kind of see in my brain did kind of say, I wonder if the guy was like that. And it turns out to be right. But I kept doubting myself because of the way they portrayed him. Yes, he's almost ridiculously fawned over by people. It's like, it's not even an ounce of anyone who sees him as anything else but kind of like a god in many ways. It's like, it's stand in awe of him like he's a god. And it's like, well, that could go a certain way. But then again, some other aspects of it, the way that, for example, the way that she describes him being like, when the truth comes out, and I'll get to the truth later, but it's like, is that it turned off like a switch, turned like a switch. Like one day he was like, he wasn't like this, and then he was. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that didn't jibe with my understanding of what that is, how that goes in reality. And the fact that you would at least expect not everyone to be as adoring of him in that case. If what the end was actually the case, then you would not expect that kind of uniformity even in a society that does go down that road. So, but in any case, it's like there were inconsistencies that way that kept me from signing on to that theory throughout the film. So it just kind of looked like he was like, no one could possibly live up to the expectations they're building up for this guy. And it just became more and more obtuse that way, and for me at least.
Yeah, I mean, just, thinking like, trying to think like, what did he do? You're really just not expecting that. By any stretch. Like, what you're thinking is probably like, he might be abusive. That would have been, of course, or he had like a secret lover, maybe something like that, or he actually like had a child, or he's a rich man, maybe it was one of those cases where you could have, it's not that it's shocking, but you're just not ready because you're going, oh, it's not like, I can't believe that. You're just going, oh, I don't think I would have thought about that.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, I only halfway got there because the movie I only halfway got there.
And the problem is, again, with this type of reveal, there's like no hints at it. That's
no.
There's zero hints at it.
No.
And, I wondered, if we wanted to really have fun with this whole podcast, this particular podcast, we wouldn't give the reveal away until like the very last 5 or so minutes of this. But we're probably not going to do that because that kind of, takes away from our thing. But wouldn't that would be the frustrating thing? We're just dancing around the whole entire time. And then at the end of it, we're going, okay, by the way, he's bam. And then we just kill the episode.
Yeah. But it would be kind of in line with the way the movie goes in general, in that it wasn't just the fact that they weren't telling you much of anything related to the ending. They weren't moving like plot pieces. I could not detect any plot pieces being moved, and no character pieces being moved even. Within either of the two main characters, there was no movement on either front up until those last several minutes. I would say that the inciting event, the inciting incident is the reveal. It's the only thing that comes around that's really forms a definitive change in direction for the audience's understanding.
And that's where you get that's where you start getting, more than just conversation. I'm okay. Like, I want to make this very clear. I'm okay with like the way the movie's set up, where there's not a lot of action. There's there's not a lot of physical action other than conversations between characters. I'm perfectly fine with that.
Oh yeah, I am too.
But once you get to the reveal, that's when everything kind of like, you're right. It's, it's like the Band-Aid's ripped off and the real movie starts to flow out. And even with that, it's like you're in this window of like 5 to 10 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. That's when everything really truly happens in the film.
Yeah.
And you're left going, I was left going anyways. I was like, this little chunk of movie right here is super interesting. I want more of this. But we didn't get more of that.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with this film.
I'm going to just come out and say it because I'm not going to hold off in the end, but it's like, he's revealed, the guy at the last 5-10 minutes, he's revealed to be a proto-fascist. Okay? And the reason people are adoring him is because he's built himself up this kind of reputation and as this, I don't know, it's like he can do all kinds of things, which is what fascists do. They want the people to believe that they can handle every situation without almost just by like looking at it. He looks at it and it solves itself through the force of his will. And that's the kind of person he's supposed to have been. And for me, it's like, I'm looking at this, it's like having the idea of a movie be about what would happen if you were to try and document the moment. Like, say someone comes along who's going to be a fascist, but he dies just short of his moment of ascension. That could be something interesting, but it wouldn't be this kind of movie, for a number of reasons. I mean, for example, let's say you still have the reporter character in there, and he's talking at one point in a scene with the widow about going through his unpublished speeches. Well, I'm telling you right there is like, that would be a tell, okay? Like, he turns those down. He's like, well, that's not all that very interesting to me. Why are you turning this down? It's like, this guy, the things she was offering him, it would have probably told at least to someone who with an inquisitive mind. And that goes to something else too. It's like, fascists can't convince everybody. It's never that unanimous, okay? Or any kind of dictator, it's never that clear and where everyone's on board with it. There's always a sizable chunk of the population that's just not going to be on board with it. I think even at the height of Hitler's democratic popularity, at least when you could judge by the votes he got, it was like something on the order of 30 to 35% of the population, of the German population, who actually wanted him to be, to have that party. It was not an overwhelming majority. And there was actually some significant dissent within Germany. Although after a while, it's like, well, then it becomes dangerous to stick your neck out, okay? After that point, you can't really tell what his actual popularity is, But for those parts where you can, it's like, well, no, you would see something, right? It wouldn't be so fawning that, for example, you could not see, this is another problem I had, that you would have, as a widow, if you thought this was a problem and it was torturing you, that you wouldn't think you'd find some sympathy in some part of the population. It would have revealed itself, and you would have been okay with talking about it because you would know at least a good chunk of the population would be with you. You understand? Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense to me, what you're saying. I was thinking maybe that whole giving speeches thing should have been a dead giveaway to us, or more of a dead giveaway. And I still think, looking back on it, it's like, no, maybe not, because like, I'm thinking about, because this is set. Like, folks, this is not like a fake place. They talk about World War II. They talk about, the Nazis. They talk about, the persecution of the Jews. They don't hesitate to not talk about this kind of stuff during the film, especially when you get the reveal. And that's what I'm saying, during the film, the last 5 to 10 minutes of the film. More like 15, but still. They talk about this. And so, you find out that, like, yeah, he's pretty much, like, he is inspired by Hitler. Isn't that a fake place? And like, I'm sitting there thinking about it as you said that, and thinking about, the part where he's talking about the speeches. And I'm like, I don't just like recall just like people just going around giving random speeches. Maybe that should have been a giveaway, but and that maybe that's just more semantics. There's also one other issue that I have. You have a guy who's sitting on a golden throne of sorts. He's not been there with us.
Well, I mean,
and I said that as a comment. He's not been there with us. He's not been in the same positions that we've been in. So it's like, it doesn't make it as believable as, other things. But I don't know. Soapbox over with.
I will say this. I think if I can take what you're saying and narrow it down a bit, because it all depends not so much on the person actually having been one of us, per se, as the ability to sell yourself as someone who's been through it. The actual wealth level, I think, is somewhat independent of that. To me, it's more about what you can sell yourself as. If you can market yourself as someone who's for the people. So I wouldn't necessarily discount that on its own. But what my problem is that I want to learn about the guy, something. But here's the problem, is like, if you do that, you have to be kind of creative and artful in not giving away too much about it so that it becomes too obvious too quickly to the audience. If you're still trying to go for the reveal, which, by the way, maybe you don't want to go for the big reveal. Maybe you don't want to go for the twist ending. Maybe you just want to have something like that be a mid-act twist. A mid-movie twist instead of something you hold off until the end. I just need to know more about the guy. And all we do is hear about, more about her, which is nice and all, but it's more talking about her than actually learning about her. And talking about him instead of learning about him. In terms, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And no one, and that's the issue. It's like, because we don't learn about the guy, no one is none the wiser. there's a lot to this movie that I think would have been just a lot more fun to, have this like yeah, you're right, a mid reveal, but you can make it to where Spencer Tracy's character doesn't have enough proof to send it to the presses, and maybe like he uncovers the shadowy organization that the guy belongs to. Again, like we really don't even have much there.
No,
we have kind of like, this was his ideals, but was he with anybody? Like you could have connected this movie. You could have connected this movie if you wanted to Notorious. Like part 2 of Notorious.
I can envision an entire different movie where the reporter is actually doing his job instead of turning down all these key information that she's offering him, first of all, and then having leads like the mother, Ryan, who is willing to spill the beans, right? And he gets a lead on her, on the dude's mom. And he, for like, I don't know how many minutes passed. It was like 15, it felt like forever. He doesn't act on it. And then when he finally kind of has it presented to him on an open plate, he gets shut down so quickly, he doesn't even put up a fight about having this key interview being taken away from him. And like, he's almost like he's resigned to it instantly. It's like, oh, I guess that's I came up here to interview her, but now I'm going to give up on that. It's like, but he gives in so easily. I just understand. There's a movie here where you could have a dogged investigator trying to do his best job, but it's like he won't even do that. It was so frustrating as an audience member.
Yeah, and I think it kind of does its own little way to answer that question. Because like at the end of the movie, what we get is we do get like, he does write a story. He writes 2 stories. The one is the guy who, the true character of the man. And the other one is about Katharine Hepburn's character.
Yeah.
And, it's clear that even regardless of what he wanted to do, he cared more about her story than he cared about his story. And that's fine. That's somewhat fine if you're not dealing with like a fascist type of, reveal, if you're not dealing with something that's so big and whatnot. Because like, again, if they went the simple route of like, okay, this guy did this, this, and this, I don't care about that. I care more about how she persevered. I care more about how she, moved past this, especially in the face of scrutiny, and especially in the face of everyone thinking that she had something to do with it. And again, it's kind of another little reveal here. She had something to do with his death, but basically she just didn't tell him.
Yeah,
about the bridge.
You make it as thin as possible. Her culpability really very thin.
Yeah. It's like she didn't, more or less she just didn't say, hey, the bridge is not good.
It's like, yeah, to have a character go through the same inner turmoil, right, of having to wrestle with this person you thought you loved, right, and then to come to the realization that he doesn't really love anything but power, and then become face to face with that, and then, well, maybe make your character shoot the guy, maybe make the spouse kill the other spouse.
Yeah.
And it's dramatic, it's terrible, but it's like, well, it makes you think more, right? At least you would understand there's a commitment being made. Whereas opposed to, it's like, here I'm not sure you get either the best of any world, with the decisions they made with. Yeah, I had the same frustrations in general speaking, yeah.
Oh, there's one other kind of goofy thing about this film, and this happened in Notorious as well, I'm pretty sure. He's got like legit like war plans. I'm fairly certain they talk about like an atomic bomb at some point.
It might have been, I don't remember that particularly, but she went through a whole laundry list of things at the end. She just spilled in a very uncharacter-like way, kind of an info dump at the end.
What I love about that is like this happened in Notorious, this happens in this movie. It's just how extreme they are. Like it's like we're going 90 or we're going 0 to 100 like real quick with this whole, and again, it does not do well to the spirit of what was actually happening at that time period.
I am solidly a don't look at it. The movie for me was a complete mess in just about every aspect. It had a neat concept at the end, but in terms of execution, it was dry and dull and pretty much a listless mess that 2 very skilled actors just couldn't save it. Perhaps one kernel of an idea. That's what you had. It suggested an entirely different movie, maybe a better one by someone else at some point. But it's like, you could watch. Like I said, go watch Face in a Crowd. Go watch that one again. That's a really good movie. And it has similar, psychological, themes around, that kind of personality type. Just to wash this one out of your head. That's where I'm at on this. How about you, man?
don't look at it for the first hour and 30 or hour and 20 minutes, and then it becomes a solid bad date movie.
Yeah.
So if you just wanted to skip all the way to the reveal, there you go. It's neat if you're a fan of Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn's relationship. You get to watch that on display. It's neat if you want to see things about history that doesn't really unfold until the last, I'm not kidding you, the last 15, maybe at most 20 minutes of the movie, but last about 15, 10 minutes of the movie. So I am serious. It's don't look at it until that last, then it becomes bad dates. It doesn't become anything more than that.
If you were just said you had to watch the whole movie, it would be don't look at it. If it was if you had to watch the whole movie to get the end.
Yeah.
That's a fair assessment. I hear you on that. So anyway, at this time, folks, we'd like to remind our listening audience out there that if you're having a good time listening with Ryan and me dusting off these old movies in search of kind of celluloid gold, do like, subscribe, comment, and of course, follow us on your podcast purveyor of choice. Tell us what you think we got wrong, because we're not perfect. Maybe you like this film. Maybe you think it's great. Enjoy what you will. But go ahead and, while you're at it, clue us in on a few titles you'd like us to see cover on future episodes, as long as they're available for free on Tubi, because this adventure comes with no strings attached. And on the subject of future episodes, Ryan, what do we have coming next week?
So we have another movie that is built off the back of two characters' chemistry with one another. Did you know that?
I do, actually. It's actually probably the reason why they got cast.
Yeah. Folks, for the longest time, I've asked myself this one question, and by the longest time, I mean 2 movies. Is there a movie from Joan Crawford that I'm going to genuinely enjoy? And we're going to answer that question again tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but again in our next episode.
Next week.
Our next week's episode. We're going to answer that question next week's episode as we watch 2 aging sisters, really aging, 2 aged sisters who are both former celebrities. They are bound together in a psychopathic relationship by their mutual dependency, jealousy, and hatred.
Maybe you guessed it already.
After watching the film, it's a bit of an understatement. This is a famous film, though. It's famous for a lot of different reasons. Maybe some of you have already seen it. This movie is the 1962 original What Happened to Baby Jane? Again, starring Bette Davis and Joan Crawford.
Yes. There's a natural rivalry there that they had, but I don't know. I forget even the reason why they hated each other. There's a history there. I'm looking forward to that one, and Ryan, and looking forward to having you guys out there with us again next week. So, as always, we'll see you next week, and Ryan, I'll see you next week. Bye-bye, folks.
Well, tell her to take her boots off. I'll be right down. You bore me.